Good morning and welcome back to Interpreting course for week two. We're going to learn about active listening and memory training for interpreters. Now, a lot of you have probably learned how to interpret, but most of you probably don't know or never even practice how to interpret. Well, interpreting requires um, a lot of trainings for not only listening, but also to remember a lot of things. So, in this chapter, we're going to practice on how to listen and how to memorize. Okay, so what is active listening? So, active listening is not only to focus on just words, but we also listen to the meaning, to the tone, intention, and the context that are being given. And of course, interpreters, they have to understand what is being said before they translate or interpret. And it also requires how to formulate the words in the target language. So, for example, if you are translating from English into Indonesian, you have to comprehend, you have to understand first what is the intent meaning from the source language, and then you reformulate into the target language. Okay, so it's not only merely to translate word for word, but it's focusing on translating, um, I'm sorry, to interpret the intention, the whole context, even the tone, even the meaning, um, that is required for you to interpret, especially in, as I said last week, especially for medical interpreting, especially for legal interpreting. So there are four key components for active listening and comprehension. The first one is concentration. So when interpreting, you have to concentrate and avoid any distractions. For example, if you have problems at home, you have to forget about your problems and you have to concentrate on what is your job desk, and then you have to stay fully engaged in whatever you are interpreting in. So before you actually translate, for example, in legal settings, you have to even read about what is going to be interpreting at the current moment. You have to study and analyze the case, and then also predictions. So you can anticipate on what the person is going to say next. Um, and because this happens when you have already comprehend or understand, based on the context of what is being given by the speaker, and then you try to anticipate what is going to be told next. The third thing is to identify the main ideas. So you focus on what is going to be said in what is the person's trying to say, the real meaning, the core of the message. So it's not only to focus on word for word, but the essence of what is told by the speaker. And then also you have to really pay attention to the linking words, okay? Notice that there will be also connectors from one sentence to the other. For example, like however, therefore, in addition. It also helps you to actually build the connection to 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 enable you to comprehend more on the stages of the sentences that are told. And for the listening strategy, there are three process on the listening strategy. So the first one is top-down processing. So top-down processing requires background knowledge, okay, to predict meaning. As I said that interpreters, of course, you have to, when you are a legal interpreter, you have to have prior knowledge, of course. And in the current context where you are interpreting, okay, you have to have the expectations of what is going to be interpreted. You have to have the context, okay? So you can help yourself to make sense of what is going to be said by the speaker in the person's incoming speech. Okay, so instead of waiting for every single word, you can predict, okay, the meaning based on what the knowledge that you have, even the cultural understandings that you have, even looking at the structures of the speech. For example, in greetings, in thanking, or in conclusions. And the second is bottom-up processing. So you focus on the actual words or sounds, okay, and the grammar structures. So you are starting from the words and sounds, you are constructing it, okay, from the smallest unit until the higher units, which is sentence. You find the keywords and then you listen to the keywords and you try to construct them into more higher meaningful units, which is sentence. And then the third is to combine both from the top down and bottom up for accuracy and also for speed. Okay, so effective interpreting requires a balance of those top down and bottom up processing. Okay, so it's by predicting the structure and anticipating the meaning. Okay, so both of these ensures the accuracy, okay, especially for the bottom up, the accuracy of names and numbers, technical terms, because you are concentrating on the smallest meaning until the higher units, which is sentence. And then we're going to start learning about memory training for interpreters. So memory is very crucial for interpreters. Interpreters rely mostly on short-term memory, okay? Especially when you're doing simultaneous interpreting. And also your memory must work, okay? So we call it WM for working memory. So when you have good memory, you will have smoother interpreting. You have more accurate delivery in your interpreting. Okay, so why memory matters? So in short-term memory, okay, you will hold information for a few seconds. This is very much needed in simultaneous interpreting, okay? And in here, in short-term memory, you will remember a whole full sentence. Okay, the example here is just a very short um, sentence, but sometimes in the field, you will have to face a longer sentence and how you could remember it in short period of time until you don't have any pauses and you just have to interpret. And then the system that actively holds and manipulates information, so the working memory. Okay, so as I said, that your memory must work very well in order for you to capture and grasp the meaning of, or the content, even the tone, the style of the person is talking. Okay, why strong memory is crucial? Because the first one is it enables accuracy. Of course, you have to remember names, numbers, and a lot of technical terms. Okay, they must be retained exactly and accurately. Okay, and ensures fluency. Okay, so there will be no pauses. You cannot stop and ask again. Well, in some occasion you can stop and ask, can you repeat that again? But we just want to make sure that we are professional interpreters. Therefore, we tend to don't repeat again. Okay, so it ensures the fluency and professionalism of us as interpreters. And then supports anticipation. Okay, so just um it will allow you to have a strong memory, okay, to combine past information with context and to predict the upcoming meaning. There are techniques of how to interpret. For chunking, we usually use chunking for side translation. So you read and then you break the information into meaningful units. Okay. But remember, always remember when you are given any some kind of documents, medical, legal, and etc., you always have to read the document first. Okay. And you have to read it thoroughly and carefully. And when you read, you don't need to interpret it yet. You just have to comprehend the document or the text that are given by your client. Okay, and then you break those information into meaningful units, and then pause your interpretation to read ahead. So when you have read um, on a certain amounts of words, for example, like for example, like in one sentence, okay, you must pause, okay? You must pause and comprehend, and then you interpret, and then you can start your interpreting after you have really grasped the understanding and you have done your task of interpreting very well, and you can pause and start again. So actually, you just have to be very strategic in pausing your interpreting. Okay, so how would this be possible? How could it be like, how could you be very fluent in doing this side translation? Is that you can do the methods of chunking. So chunking here, as I said, chunking is you break the information into meaningful units because it increases your accuracy and fluidity, and and you are not going to read the whole thing and interpret at once, but it will help you to really accurately combining those interpretation from one point into the other. Okay, and chunking often indicated by these punctuation marks like this. Okay, so when the sentence goes and follows by a comma or it ends with a dot, then you can have them chunked. But it depends on how uh it depends on the strategic of the interpreter on how they want to chunk. Okay. So for example, like I'll just give an example. I first saw him across a busy street. Here okay, let me just get my laser. So here, how do you chunk? You read the sentence first, like when you, for example, in my case, when I want to take a deep breath, that's when I just pause my chunk. I first saw him across a busy street. This is where I take my breath again, and also here it indicates um a stop here or pause here by comma. So you can interpret from here to here first, and then you pause. Okay? So saya melihat dia di di seberang sebuah jalan yang sangat ramai ya. Oke, di seberang jalan yang sangat ramai. So and then you pause it here. Okay, and then you take a deep breath and you continue to where you want to chunk it again. Okay, so here, um, I'll give you a minute for you to identify the chunks in the text above. Okay, so where would you want to chunk again? Okay, so try to chunk it by yourself. So next is the result of the chunking. This would be my results of my chunking. It could be different for different interpreters. Okay. So I saw him across a busy street, and then you gotta pause here. And it was love at first sight. You can chunk here. Our eyes locked, and he walked over. You chunk here. So every time there's a chunk, it's when I tend to actually take a deep breath and interpret, and then read for the next one. Okay. Now, this is an example of an awkward chunk. I first saw him across and then you interpret. This is a very awkward chunk. busy street, and it was love at first. Okay, you see the chunks are very awkward here. Okay, so how can you do um so these techniques, chunking and also the further one that I will explain, um they all require meditation. Okay, why? Because it improves concentration, it helps you set goals, it calms your nerves, and it preps you for success interpreting. So when I want to interpret, I usually take time for myself to take a deep breath and just relax for a few minutes. Do some actual meditation at home, and just try to relax myself. Okay, another technique is visualization. So you when there's a when there's are several ideas, you just have to build images in your head, and you connect those images to create the ideas from one idea to the other. So for example, like the economy is growing like a tree, so you can imagine money and you can imagine trees, so the economy is growing like a tree. Okay, and for association, it's like something that is not familiar, a terminology that is a phrase that is not familiar to you, and you try to link it with something that's more familiar. For example, like we don't have Jakarta conference here, but you just want to imagine Monas as being the icon of Jakarta, and conference you can associate it with a meeting table. Okay. And then there's also a shadowing technique. This also helps you with active listening and comprehend, mainly for active listening. Okay, so shadowing technique, it is very i- crucial in simultaneous interpreting. Okay, because it requires for you to listen and also to speak at the same time. And then for consecutive interpreting, it's also very important. Why? Because it helps you to practice your pronunciation, your diction, enunciation, and also your speed. And then in shadowing technique, you can improve your focus and recovery. I mean, like you can, when you make mistakes, you can train again and recover from your mistakes. And in shadowing technique, it helps you to um, practice paraphrasing, in terms that when you can um, you listen a lot of times and you try to grasp the meaning and you paraphrase. The only thing is that you cannot change any meaning, especially when it's very crucial.
Welcome to the United States Immigration
Okay,
Court.
so
I
this
am
is an
Immigration Judge
example
Christopher
of
Santoro. I am going to
shadowing
explain the
technique.
purpose of these court proceedings and your rights. After I explain these rights to you, an immigration judge will talk to you individually about
Okay,
your
so you
case.
see how she is as an interpreter, listen and speaking at the same
You
time.
should have
This is
received a
called
copy of the
simultaneous
notice to appear
interpreting.
in your case.
Okay, now let's practice listening and recall. So you will listen to a short speech and without writing any notes. So remove any pens or pencils and um, notepad or whatever. And then please recall main idea first, main idea, and 3 to 5 key details. For example, here, this is a text, but you will later hear a speech. Yesterday, the Minister of Health announced a new vaccination program for children. The program will start next month and it is expected to cover more than 1 million students across the country. So you recall the main idea, which is, okay, and then you find the 3 to 5 key details, okay? So which are the things that you can recall? The main idea and 3 to 5 key details. So for the audio, you can click here. I'm not sure if I can click it just because that I'm
Every morning, tell yourself today is going to be a good day. Positivity attracts positivity. Like a magnet, the brighter we shine, the more good things we attract.
Okay, so that's a short speech that you have to recall the main idea and 3 to 5 key details. All right.
Every morning, tell yourself today.
Okay, so this is assignment that you have to upload, okay, because you have to record yourself and then you have to upload it on Google Drive, which the link has been provided here. So you play the audio and then you record yourself shadowing like the previous interpreter and then submit it here. Okay, I'll play the audio. It's not playing. Oh, it should be playing. I hope that there will be no uh problems with the audio later. If there is, I will have to send the audio separately. Okay, assignment 2. So you have to practice chunking the text below and silently interpret the text. Okay, so where do you want to chunk it? Okay, you don't have to record anything here. I just want you to uh, chunk it, chunk the text, and then practice yourself how to interpret the chunks. Alrighty, so I think that's it.